Hello, good evening, guys, and I welcome you to today's tutorial class. In our first meeting, we looked at problem set 1 and 2, and today I'm going to look at problem set 4, and if there's time, I will also look at problem set 5. Okay, so I'm going to read the question. In addition to the risk-free security, you currently invested in the Tanglewood Fund, a broad-based fund of stocks and other securities with an expected rate of 12% and a volatility of 25%. The risk-free rate return, the risk-free rate of return is 4%. Okay, so let me start. Now the first asset is Tanglewood. And Tanglewood, it has an expected return, which is R, of 12%, and a volatility of 25%. The risk-free rate of return is 4%. So RF, also risk-free rate, risk-free is 5%. Your broker suggests that you add a venture capital fund to your current portfolio. The venture capital fund has an expected return of 20%. So venture has an expected return of 20%. And a volatility of 80%. And a correlation of 0.2% with Tanglewood. So correlation between venture capital and Tanglewood is equals to 0.2. Sorry, equals to 0.2. Now, calculate the required rate of return via Capm and use it to decide whether you should add the venture capital fund to your portfolio. Now, the first thing you're supposed to know is what is our formula for Capm. So Capm states that expected return of a particular investment I is equals to RF plus beta to bracket RM minus RF. Okay. Now, when you look at the question carefully, prior to adding the venture capital, the only asset that we had was the Tanglewood, which means that the Tanglewood represents the market. In that regard, then I can say the return on the market is equals to 12%. And the volatility on the market, return on the market is RM. And then volatility on the market is also equals to 0.25. So when you look at the equation, we already know that our RF is equals to 5%. That is the risk-free rate is 5%. We also know that an RM is equals to 12%. So what we don't know in this case is our beta. So then how do we calculate our beta? Now the formula for finding beta, the formula for finding beta is equals to covariance between the return on the market and the return on the asset that we have added, which is the venture capital, all over the variance of the market. Okay. If you recall from our first discussion, we also said that covariance is the same as what? The correlation. So beta is equals to correlation between the market, which in this case is the Tanglewood, and that of the venture capital, multiplied by the standard or the volatility of the market, and then the volatility of venture capital all over the variance of the market. So this can cancel this. That means I can say that beta is the same as the correlation multiplied by the standard error of the venture capital all over the standard error of the market, or the same as the volatility. That means my beta is equals to, and from the question we were given that our correlation is 0.2 multiplied by our volatility for venture capital, and that of venture capital is the expected return is 0.8. Now the standard error of the volatility of the market represents that of the Tanglewood, which is 0.25. So when you do your simple calculation, that is 0.2 times 0.8 divided by 0.25, you have your beta equals to 0.64. Now that we know our beta, we can replace it into the Capm formula, which is expected R is equals to RF plus beta into bracket RM minus RF. Now we know that our RF is, that is the risk-free rate is 4%. Plus beta, which is 0.64 into bracket our RM, which is the same as that of the return on Tanglewood, which is 12%, minus 4% again. So then I can say that our expected return in this case is equals to 4 plus 0.64 into bracket 12 minus 4, which gives you 9.12%. So that is using the Capm. So the question is calculate the required rate of return via Capm and use it to decide whether you should add a venture capital fund to your portfolio. Okay, so now we know that if the firm is, if you are to invest only in Tanglewood, you are going to have expected return of 12%. Now by adding venture capital to it, that is having a portfolio of venture capital and then Tanglewood, you are now going to have expected return of 9.12%. So as a rational investor, you would prefer going for only Tanglewood that gives you 12% rather than investing in that of the portfolio that will give you 9.12%. Mind you, we have been asked to make this decision based on the Capm, and the Capm gives you only the expected return. So what I'm doing here is just to compare the returns of the portfolio, which is 9.12%, to that of the return on only the Tanglewood, which is 12%. If I had been given the volatility of this portfolio, then perhaps maybe I could have just based on the volatility and expected returns, because in order to make decisions in such situation, you always have to look at both your returns and your volatility. So I would have just looked at the volatility and the return of only investing in Tanglewood, which is 12% at 12% returns, and that of 25% volatility. Then I will just compare that with the expected return of the portfolio, which is 9.12%, and its volatility. But in this question, we were only asked to make the comparison based on the expected returns. So because the expected returns on investing in Tanglewood alone is 12%, which is higher than that of expected return of investing in both Tanglewood and that of venture capital, then you suggest the person goes for only Tanglewood, because that gives the person a higher expected return. I hope this is okay. Now the second question. Okay, so assume your broker suggests to include exchange rate. So assume your broker suggests. Let me clean this part. Sorry, I need some space. Okay, so assume your broker suggests to include exchange trade fund. Let me call this fund exchange trade fund, which is ETF, to your portfolio, and that gives you expected return is 15%. Expected return is 15%, and a volatility of 40%. And a volatility of 40%, with correlation, and the correlation with Tanglewood is 1.3. So correlation between and the correlation with Tanglewood fund is 1.3. So that is ETF, and that of Tangle fund, and then that with Tanglewood is also 1.3. All right. So the question is, what is the required rate of return of this ETF under Capm? So we are also looking for the required rate of return, the same thing. So R of ETF is equals to RF plus beta is equals to RF plus beta of ETF multiplied by RM minus RF. So in this case, we know RF already, we know RM. What we don't know is the beta of ETF. So I can say then the beta of ETF, which is the same as the covariance between, is the same as covariance between the return on ETF and that of return on the market, all over the variance on the market, which is the same as correlation multiplied by the standard error, in the market times the standard error of ETF, all over the variance of the market. Same way, this cancels this. That means we have our beta equals to 1.3 multiplied by the standard error of ETF. And the standard error of ETF is 0. The standard error of ETF is 0.4. all over that of the market, which is 0.25. So that we have 1.3 times 0.4 divided by 0.25. And that gives you beta equals to 2.08. 2.08. This beta is equals to 2.08. Beta equals to 2.08. So if I know that my beta is equal to 2.08, then I can say that my return on ETF is equals to 5%. Sorry, is equals to 4%. The risk-free rate RF is equals to RF, which is 4%, plus my beta, which is 2.08, into bracket return on market, which is 12%, minus 4% again. And that gives you 4 plus 2.08, 12 minus 4. So we have 4 plus 2.08 into bracket 12 minus 4, which is 20.064. So RETF is equals to 20.64. Now the next question is, are these funds under or overvalued according to Capm? Okay, so let's look at this. In the question, we said venture capital had a return of, the venture capital that had expected return of 20%. And that of ETF had expected return of 15%. Now, when we use Capm, Capm gave us 9.12% according to Capm. And that of ET also gave us 20.64. Then clearly I can say Capm undervalued this one. And Capm also overvalued. Well, this is supposed to be 15, so I will say overvalued. Because the 20.64 is greater than what was given, which is 15% for this one. And this Capm, they gave 20%. However, Capm gave us 9.12. So the Capm undervalued venture capital wise, it's overvalued that of ET fund. Okay, so that is according to question 4. Let's move to question 5. Question 5. In question 5, your investment portfolio consists of 15,000 invested only in one stock, Microsoft. So that is our portfolio has 15,000, and this 15,000 has been invested in Microsoft. Microsoft equals to 15,000. It's equals to 15,000. Suppose the risk-free rate is 5%, that is RF is equals to 5%. Equals 5%. Microsoft has an expected return of 12%. So return on Microsoft is equals to, expected return of Microsoft is equals to 12%, and it has a volatility. Volatility is also equals to 40%. And the market portfolio, so I'll call that market portfolio, has an expected return of 10%. So I'll call that RM is equals to 10%. And a volatility of 18%. And a volatility of 18%. Under the Capm assumption, A, what alternative investment has the lowest possible volatility while having the same expected rate of return as Microsoft? What is the volatility of this investment? So let's look at the question again. What alternative investment has the lowest possible volatility while having the same expected return as Microsoft? So the key word here is the same expected return as Microsoft. So let me write under the Capm assumption. So the condition. So let me write my Capm assumption. So Capm says that return on I is equals to RF plus beta into bracket RM minus RF. This is the Capm. So first we know our Capm. Now the question is saying that if it has the same expected rate of return as Microsoft. So in this case, what we do not know here is but we've been told return on this investment with RI is the same as what? That of the return on Microsoft. And the return on Microsoft is what? When you check from the question, it has an expected return of 12%. So that means I can say RI is equals to 0.12, which is equals to RF, which is 5%, 0.05 plus beta into bracket RM. And then RM is given as 10%, which is 0.1 minus 0.05. Okay, so through this, I can get my beta. So I can say 0.12 minus, or 12% minus 5% is 0.07. So that is 7% is equals to beta into bracket, and 10% minus 5% is 5%, so 5% beta. So when I divide, then I have 7 divided by 5 is equals to 1.4. That means my beta is equals to 1.4. Now in the question, we've been asked to find the volatility of this investment. Now, if I can say RI is equals to RF plus beta RM plus the error term. Now, when I'm looking for the volatility, that means the variance, R is equals to this. I'm going to write this. So if I'm looking for the variance of RI, this investment, now RF is a constant term, so variance of a constant term is 0. It's okay. So the variance of a constant term, RF is 0. But I'm going to have this part being beta squared, and then variance of the market becomes variance of the market plus the variance of this. Now, because this is completely diversified, because we will say this one is equal to 0. So this expression here is equal to 0. So I have variance of Ri. So variance of the asset I that I'm interested in is equals to beta. And I already know that beta is equal to 1.4 all squared multiplied by the variance of the market. Now, what the variance of the market? We said the market portfolio has an expected rate of 10% and a volatility of 18%. So that is 0.18 squared. So that means I have 1.4 squared times 0.18 squared. So this becomes the variance. So when I square root it, because I'm looking for the standard error, it becomes this I equals to the square root of 1.4 squared multiplied by 0.18 squared. And that gives me square root of the answer, which is 0.252, or the same as 25.2%. 25.2%, which is equals to 25 equals to 25.2%. Okay, so that is the volatility of this investment is 25.2%. Great. Now the next question is, what investment has the highest possible expected rate of return while having the same volatility as Microsoft? So the key emphasis on this is the same volatility as what? Microsoft. So let's move on. So when I come here, just like I wrote a formula, variance of I is equals to beta squared variance of the market squared plus the variance of the error term. But because we said it's completely diversified, this expression here is 0, right? Now, so we know that you are saying that the variance of this should be the same as what? What is the what investment has the highest possible expected rate of return while having the same volatility as Microsoft? So having the same volatility as Microsoft. So in this case, we know that the volatility is the same as that of Microsoft, which is this one should be the same as that of Microsoft. And we already know this one in the market, that is representing the market. So what we don't know here is now the beta. So I can say, okay, so the variance of that of Microsoft is 40%. So I'll write 0.4 all squared equals to beta squared, and then the variance of the market, which is 0.18. So the market is 0.18 squared. That means I can say beta is equals to 0.4 over 0.18. That means if that's the case, then 0.14 divided by 0.18, which is 2.22. So that means our beta is equals to 2.222. It's reoccurring. Okay, so the question is, what is the expected rate of return of this investment? Now we know according to Capm, R of this investment is equals to RF plus beta into brackets RM minus RF. Now we have RI. Now we know RF is equals to, we know that RF is equals to 5%. Sorry, RF is equals to 5% plus, we know that the beta is now equals to 2.22, all into brackets. We have our RM. Now RM is 10% minus 5%. So when I do this, I'm going to have 5 plus 2.22 into bracket 10 minus 5. And that gives me 16.1%. So that means I can say my RI is equals to 16.1%. 16.1%. So that brings us to the end of tutorial 1. Thank you.